Greetings all and welcome to Lucas Sprues. In today's video we're going to be doing an inbox review of the recently reissued Italeri 1/72nd scale Focke-Wulf Fw 190 D9 version. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as usual with my inbox reviews, we'll have a look at the box, then the instructions to see how the kit goes together, and then finally we'll have a look at the plastic parts and the decals. So on the front here we have the usual painted style that Italeri have used for their boxes with what looks like the FW190D with a very nice patchy looking late war camouflage, and it's flying through the clouds with the contrails streaming off the wings as it engages a P-51 with the D-Day stripes. And then we've got the usual titles with Italeri's logo and the aircraft type and the model number. The scale, and we have a little marking here that says new decal edition, saying that it's not a new tool but it does have some new decals. On the bottom here we have a little thing that says super decal sheet for 6 versions, and that basically says we have 6 different marking options, which is quite a lot for a single 1/72nd scale warbird kit. Sadly, a figure is not included, and it only contains 1 model. It would have been great if it was 2. On the side here, we have a little bit of history about the D version of the FW190 in quite a few different languages. On the sides here, we have a repeat of the box art along with one of the schemes here. Then on the top, we have that same scheme, and we have a little sheet here that says, or a little marking that says, accurate markings printed in Italy by Cartograf. So Cartograf obviously are pretty damn good with making decals. They do all of Airfix's ones, and I've seen a lot more of Italeri's more recent kits using them, which is pretty good. And we actually get a preview of what our decal sheet looks like, and as you can see there are quite a few little markings to have a look at a bit later. Finally, on the back of the box here, we actually have the 6 different schemes included. Along with a coloured colour guide here, which looks pretty nice. Looks like you get quite a decent selection of different markings for this kit, and it looks like it reflects the wide range of uses of the FW190D quite well in the later part of the war. So quite happy with these markings. We'll open it up now and have a look at the instructions to see how this one goes together. In usual Italeri style, it's the side opening box. And we have 1 plastic bag here which contains all of our sprues, followed by a set of instructions which are done in the more recent glossy kind of paper, and excitingly they're done in colour as well, which looks pretty good. So we'll have a look at the instructions first and see how this kit goes together, and then we'll have a look at the plastic parts and the decals. So, in usual Italeri form, we have a little bit more history about the aircraft on the front here. In particular, this is talking about the development of the FW190 Dora with the enlarged nose and the extended fuselage, and the fitting of the Junkers Umo 213, which was a inline engine, and the circular radiator. So the sort of late war evolution of the 190 that led to the Dora. Opening up, we then have a sprue map here, and as you can see, it's a pretty simple looking kit. We've only got 2 sprues done in moulded plastic, followed by a set of clear sprues, and it looks like in terms of key guides, there's only cutting and drilling holes required, so that's pretty simple. On the second page here, we have a colour guide, and it is done with Italeri's colour codes in mind, but they do have an English translation or name for each of these colours, like flat steel, flat white, and rust, so you could easily find replacements if you don't want to use the Italeri colours. Starting off then with step 1, we have a pilot figure, which is interesting given that the box said that we did not have a figure, but there you go, we have a pilot. Then we've got a seat along with decals for the seat belts, and a control column, 2 sidewalls, and then a rear bulkhead for the cockpit floor. Looks like we've then got a separate instrument panel, although it doesn't look like there's any decals included. You have to just paint it black and then paint white dots for where the dials are, which is pretty basic but pretty typical for Italeri and also Academy's kits. But once you've painted it up, you can then install it to the fuselage floor, join that to one of the cockpit halves, and then you can join the halves together. There's a separate piece here for the upper part of the cowling with the machine gun details, along with a separate part here for the supercharger air intake. At the back of the aircraft, you've also got the rudder, which is separate, and I'd imagine you could pose it quite easily, and you also have a little tail wheel. Turning the page over, it looks like you have two little pieces here to install between the wing halves there for the interior of the landing gear bay. And if you want to drill out a hole for the fuel tank or the bombs, you have to do so at this stage. But once you've done that and added those parts together, you can put the two upper wing halves to the lower wing half there. Moving on, you then have to install the horizontal stabilizers, and you have, looks like, several different versions of canopy. You've got one that has the sort of support structure there for the headrest for the pilot, or a second one which has a larger kind of covered piece, along with what looks like two different options for canopy. I believe that there was a early and a later version for the Dora's canopy, with one being slightly more blown. And then you've got a front windshield piece. Theoretically, you could have the cockpit open if you wanted to, although I don't think it says in the instructions where to line it up to do so, but easy enough to do if they're in two pieces like this, which is cool. Then for the front here, we have a main cowling piece with a little bit of radiator detailing, and to install the propeller, you basically fit it through a hole in the radiator and attach that little locker piece into place, and that basically acts as a washer or a lock so it doesn't come out, and you can still spin the propeller as long as you haven't glued it to the radiator. Finally, we've got a spinner cover to add onto the propeller blades, and once you've done that, you can join that front engine piece to the fuselage. We've got a few more small details here. We've got the antenna for the bottom of the aircraft and the optional step ladder. If you're doing this aircraft in flight, you could just leave that off, although if you've got it on the ground and you want it down, you can just glue it in the extended position. It looks like for the landing gear, you have to actually cut part of the door there to make it fit. But once you've done that, you can then attach the main strut piece along with this extra little part there and the tyre. And once you've done that for the other side, you can then install those to the wings. For each wheel, there's this extra bit of strut assembly that has to get installed. And for the underside, you've got, looks like only the option for drop tanks, unless on the... Oh no, you do have a bomb. So you've got a little rack here that you have to assemble, and for the drop tank there, you've got various decal options depending on which scheme you're going for. Or you can attach the single, I believe it was a 500 or 250 kilogram bomb, although it might have been a 500 kilogram as well in some cases. And once you've done that, you can move on to painting. So as I've mentioned, it's all in colour, and I think that's really good, especially for some of these complicated schemes where you've got sections in that kind of yellow RLM 76. Interestingly, they identify it as RLM 84, which is a bit odd. I believe it was always 76, although they had different variations. Personally, I like to use AK Interactive's German paints for these kind of schemes because they use the same codes, and they would refer to it as 76, so I think I might as well do that as well. This aircraft's a bit interesting because it's got the flat aluminium on the underside there and the dark grey section at the front of the wings and for the landing gear, which was common for some of the late production FW190Ds. On the upper surface, you've got RLM 75 and 74 for the wings and the tail, but the fuselage has 82 and 81, so yeah, pretty typical late war German aircraft with different coloured panels and all sorts of patchwork repairs. I think it looks pretty cool, although some people I think don't like it. But if you don't like it, you've got all these other options as well. For Scheme B, we interestingly seem to get decals for the white striping, which I think is pretty cool. I think it would be an absolute pain to try and mask that up, so instead you just have to paint the underside red, and then you can just add those decals on. Being Cartograf, they're going to be pretty good decals as well, so I think that's pretty awesome. But otherwise, this aircraft is in the early kind of 76 that's a bit more white or blue, with 81 and 82 for the upper surface camouflage pattern. Fair bit of modelling on this one, so it might be a bit tricky, but it is quite a cool and very unique looking scheme for the FW190D. For Scheme C here, we have another one that's got a few different colours for the upper surface. We've got the 75 and 74 for the wings and horizontal stabilizers, but not for the fuselage. That instead is painted 82, and the instructions say 70, so another late war variation of German paints. But the undersides are all in the same kind of blue 76. Looks like this one's got a very nice yellow tail there, which looks pretty cool. And then we've got Scheme D here, which is with RLM 82, 75 and 76. And it's just got a yellow and white tail band, although I believe they might be included as decals. You've got the bomb included on this particular version, so that's and it's part of Operation Bodenplatte. There you go. So that's the last kind of Luftwaffe offensive against the Allied air forces when they sent a large number of these aircraft to bomb the airstrips in Belgium and France. So yeah, pretty interesting aircraft there as well. Then we've got version E, which is the last one in... Oh, no, it's not the last one. We've got this one here, version E, which is done in 82 and 81 for the upper surface. Although for the underside, it again has a section of the wing that's done in aluminium. The fabric control surface and the flaps are done in the blue version of RLM 76. While the fuselage itself on the underside is 84, or I'd say 76 version 3. And finally, you've got that grey strip on the front of the wings there. And lastly, we have a aircraft done in 82 and 70 with half of the wing done in blue and the other front section done in RLM 74. And this is the one from Czechoslovakia. So quite a large number of decal options, as I previously mentioned, and it all is pretty clearly laid out. And I'm really glad that they've done it in colour, because some of these schemes are really complicated, and it would definitely be hard to follow if they were in black and white. So yeah, instructions pretty clear. Assembly for this kit looks pretty simple. We'll move on now to having a look at the plastic parts to see what kind of details we get. And unfortunately, it is at this stage where this kit starts to lose a bit of its new glossy appeal. I'll open these parts up. One good thing about this kit, though, I will mention at this stage, is that the clear parts have their own plastic bag, which protects them from getting scratched as easily by the other sprues, and I think it's a pretty good idea. But as you can see, unfortunately, this is quite a old tooling in reality. On the fuselage here, we've got, looks like a piece of hair, perhaps, or a bit of loose plastic. It's a bit hard to tell. But yeah, it's not the most modern of toolings. On the fuselage here, all of the details are pretty much raised lines, including all of those access hatches. And there are a few areas where there are recessed details, like on the hatches here. And for some strange reason, the extra section here for the Dora model of FW190, which was added in, is recessed, but the rest of everything is raised, which is an odd choice. And the exhausts are moulded to the engine cowlings, so they're not the most detailed. We've got the fuel tank here, which has a recessed kind of center section here, but otherwise not too much detail. The pylon in the corner here, the front cowling section, which is pretty basic and rather bland looking. I think there would in reality be some more recesses, and the access hatches on the side there are pretty dull and also raised. But yeah, at least they've done the machine gun detail and it looks okay. The propeller here looks alright. There is a bit of a flash on it and a few little imperfections, but nothing too major, and it looks like it's pretty accurate to the FW190D's proportions. The spinner here looks alright, although there is a fair bit of flashing and a few loose bits of plastic string there that needs to be sanded off. Cowling looks alright. It's quite nice and thin actually, although there are a few bits of flashing that will need to be sanded. And a few scratches by the looks of things on the cowlings. For the most part, looks pretty decent. Here we've got the supercharger, which is, they've done a recessed hole for it, but it's not very deep. In reality, that would be a hole straight through into the supercharger, so it looks pretty bad. I think I might have to drill that out when I do build this kit. Got a few little antennas there, which are pretty flashy looking, but hopefully I can sand that off. Here we have our pilot figure, who is pretty lumpy looking and rather basic, and his seat isn't looking too good either. There's a massive ejector pin mark in the middle of it and a lot of flash that will need to be sanded off. Cockpit floor does have some rudder pedals and a little bit of detail molded to it, but nothing really too fancy. And for the sidewalls, there's nothing really on them. They're sort of just square blobs. Bulkhead, the same story, and there's a bit of an ejector pin mark on it, which might have to get sanded as well. The antenna here looks alright for the underside of the fuselage, and so does the ladder actually, which is good. And the joystick doesn't look too bad, a little bit basic, but yeah, still looks like a joystick. For the instrument panel here, we have all raised details, so all of those dials there are circles that are raised out of the base. And the radiator details look a little bit weird. They're all raised details with no recessing, but you probably won't see an awful lot of that behind the spinner anyways. The rudder looks really basic, and there appears to be some weird kind of drizzly scratch marks of plastic, so not very well done. And a fair bit of flashing, as you can see, especially on the in part here where it joins to the fuselage, which is not good. The horizontal stabilizers have raised panel lines, but a massive recessed gap for the elevators, which I'm not a big fan of. It's a bit of a strange choice, but it's probably of its time. And as for the interior details of the cockpit for the fuselage halves, there's absolutely nothing. Just a few little marks here to help line up some parts. And for the second sprue here, the story is pretty similar. On the wings, it's all raised panel lines with recessed details only for the ailerons and the flaps. Although there doesn't appear to be too much flashing on some of these parts, there are a few weird kind of markings on the plastic, and a few little spots where there are some strange bits of flashing and some scratches. So not the best quality here. In terms of the finer details, on this sprue we have the bomb, which has some raised hoops on it for detailing, which looks, yeah, alright. Got some fins here for stabilizing them when they fall. And as for the landing gear bay doors, they're all raised panel lines as well, and pretty basic. The landing gear struts look okay. There's some nice raised details on all of those, and they look reasonably cleanly molded. So do the struts that join them to the wings, and the extra little pieces here look okay as well. The tail wheel doesn't look too bad, although the wheels here do look a little bit flat. I think they should have a bit more of a curved kind of shape to the tyre. And all of the hub details are raised, but they look okay. Then over here we have the interior parts for the wheel wells, which are, not too bad, better than nothing. They've sort of done a recessed perforated plank kind of texture for them, which then gets attached there. So yeah, at least I've had a go at that. And then we've got the headrests here with either the option for the solid one or the one here which has the extra little strut coming out. And finally we've got what looks like the little joints here for the pylons, and the little headrest part here for the solid version. Not too sure where the framed version is. It might be one of these parts here, but yeah, on the whole, fair bit of flashing, and the details are pretty basic. Not a big fan of the raised panel lines, but oh well, at least it seems to have reasonably decent shaping to it. Definitely looks like a massive improvement over the Mr. FW190, but that is a bit of a low bar considering that thing doesn't even look like the 190 when you assemble it, in my opinion. Moving on, we have the clear sprue here, which doesn't look too bad. Definitely not the best though. I think Airfix have done a much better job with their canopies, because as you can see, there's some large kind of thick blobs on the top section there, which distort them, and they are a bit on the thick side. The front window here doesn't seem to have the same issue, although there is a fair bit of distortion for all of these parts, and there are quite a few hairline scratches on them, which, especially on this one here, there's a nice big scratch going around. So yeah, not the best quality for the clear parts there. Finally, we have the decals here, which I personally think are a little bit of a silver lining in this cloud. They look really quite nicely done, the colours on them are really good, and the print detailing looks fantastic. And in typical Cartograf fashion, they're pretty much flawless, I'd say. You've got different sections here for the individual schemes, plus a few common markings. So if you want, you can cut these out and save them for another build if you want to use the extra markings you get in some other kits. As you can see with these smaller stencils, the print quality is fantastic, and you can read all of that really fine writing. Nice that they've included the seatbelts as decals. It does add a little bit of an improvement to the otherwise rather sparse and detailless cockpit. And as you can see, all of the markings looking really quite vibrant and fantastic. The decals do have a little bit of a glossy look to them, which will require some matte varnish, I reckon, once they're applied. But that's pretty typical for most decals, and as I've said, Cartograf, they're really good for their decals, and pretty much everyone seems to agree with that, and so definitely a good part of this kit. So that pretty much wraps up our look at this kit. Obviously, it's really starting to show its age, and a lot of the parts have flashing, and the details are pretty poor. I can't really comment super accurately as to whether or not the shaping is all correct and the size and proportions. I'm not really a rivet counter kind of builder, but if you are able to comment on that, then definitely leave something in the comment section. But on the whole, it does look like it's got the shaping pretty good. And the decals are very nice. There is a growing amount of people who seem to be asking that manufacturers start to show the tooling date on their kits, especially when they reissue them like this, and I think that would definitely be a good idea. Especially in this case, we have this lovely new looking box art and all these fantastic up-to-date looking visuals and really good color guides and markings, but the plastic parts are from, well, I think originally this kit is 1973 according to ScaleMate, so yeah, it's starting to get up there a little bit in terms of tooling ages. Hi, this is post-production Luca. I should point out that despite the lack of any visible redback spiders, I am in fact from Australia, so all my comments about the pricing and availability of other kits is based on me being in Australia rather than America or Europe. I think it's a bit of a shame there's not a decent 190 that's around the $20 to $25 mark at the moment in 72nd scale that I can see. I haven't noticed many of the Tamiya or Academy ones knocking about, except secondhand, and this seems to be the only kind of recent one that's in that price point, although I paid around 27 when it was brand new, so that's definitely, I think, a little bit too high for this kit, even if it does have really nice markings. Of course, there is the Mr. Craft kit I've mentioned, and I've also done a build video on a very long time ago, and it's cheap, but it's really quite bad. And then you have the IBG FW190. Again, I've done a video, although it is a little bit old on that one, and it's kind of the opposite. It's a lot more expensive, around the $40 to $35 mark, although it does have some fantastic details and seems to be really accurate and has everything recessed, including all of the rivets, so pretty impressive kit. So there are options out there, and if you can tackle or find a Tamiya or Academy second-hand one, it's probably quite good compared to this. But yeah, it is nice to see it back, but it would be nice if it was a little bit less expensive and if it was a bit more obvious on the boxing that this is an old kit. But that's it for this video. I do hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel, as it really helps out. And as I mentioned, if you have any corrections or any things to add about this inbox review, then leave it down in the comment section below. Big shout out, as always, to my wonderful patrons for helping me fund buying these kits and the products I use when I build them. This week's build video was another of the Bolt and Paul jet finds, but next week I promise will be something different. And I should, at this point, all going according to plan, have a new poll available for the next inbox review. Thanks once again for watching, and of course, take care, and until the next video, model on.